Welcome to Don't Pick the Scab podcast, the podcast that helps men over 40 in their divorce recovery struggles. We are welcoming David Nordel to the show. David's superpowers are military, transitions through his Vet Ready program, which is very interesting. We're going to talk about that too, and leadership development. He has had a distinguished Air Force career with experiences in emergency management, big-time emergency management, veteran transitions, PTSD, and mental health challenges. He has written 2 books, giving back life and leadership from the farm to combat zone, because he used to milk cows back in the day and beyond, and when the cows lie down. So you got 2 farm theories going on with the books. That's I'm interested to. The reason why quit you, their leader. So I contacted David because I felt he could help my men struggling with their divorce recovery, and because I think divorce is a type of battle or war, so to speak. Welcome to the Don't Pick the Scab podcast, with the premise of connecting men over 40 with the tools and community to thrive in their divorce recovery, either before, during, or after a divorce. Check it out. Go ahead and introduce yourself, David, and I got a few questions. We'll go from there.
Yeah, you bet. Hey, thanks, Dave. It'll be Dave and David, or however we roll, but we'll be the Dave and Dave show today.
Dave and
That's
David.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, hey, the magic, to tell the audience, the magic sometimes to this is the 10 minutes that we talk before we go on the air. And so you want to talk about bonding and dentistry and medicine, our corollaries, and I'm an emergency shock trauma nurse, but that all started as a medic in the Air Force back in 1984, and I did 30 years, 6 months, and 24 days of military service. And in there, I was fortunate enough to lead at an executive level 3 times in command leadership position. So that takes you through a lot of things. I like to tell people that I've been on 4 combat tours, but if I told you the 4, people would go, I don't even know that some of those places exist. We don't need to go there, but they're all relevant to this. And obviously, my last combat tour was as the senior enlisted leader for all the medical operations in the theater of operations in Iraq. And that's a whole different experience. Along with that comes a lot of experience, a lot of life and leadership that's in the book. Most of the book is written based on my failures and how you recover from those, and some tidbits on how to move forward. But the biggest piece of that is that when you start in a journey, you're going to pick stuff up. And sometimes that's roses, and sometimes it's something that smells bad. And sometimes that stuff can be shaken off and just put it in the background as a memory. And sometimes it's permanent, right? So if I throw a rock really hard and hit you in the head, you might bleed a little bit, and in 4 to 6 weeks, nobody would know it's there. If I threw the rock really hard, you'd have a scar, and then you have a story to tell. And so we're going to get into this. But trauma is trauma. And anytime we have an insult to ourselves, especially as men, there's reactions. And there's standard physiological and emotional and mental reactions that we have that your therapist will tell you, yes, you're acting very normal. However, there's a better way to navigate it. Because as men, I just got back from Bible study this morning. It's funny because this Bible group is growing, and it's full of veterans, and it's growing and growing. And I have not sat in that room with those men and not had them all walk this back to their pride and where they're at as they're working through their journey in life. So when you have these stumbles, right, and you talked about milking cows, I think everything you need to know in life starts on the farm, because as soon as you think you got it figured out and all the fences are fixed and all the cows are really healthy and everything's working perfectly, Mother Nature intervenes, or the cows run through the fence, or the tractor breaks down, or the hay pile tips over, or something. There's always some sort of adversity there. And if farmers got into farming and couldn't handle adversity well with the right mindset, they'd all quit farming in the first year. Because these curveballs keep coming, and they keep coming, and they keep coming. Carol Lawson, she's the basketball coach for Duke University, the women's basketball coach. And she does about a 2-minute, 50-second clip that was just taken ad hoc. She was talking to the team about handling hard better. So hopefully we can get to talking about some of that stuff. And you can ask any question you want. I'll take you down the journey whichever way you want to go with PTSD and moral injury. And I really want to talk about moral injury in conjunction with PTSD. It's lesser known. It's being studied now. My story was published on top of PhD level work out of Air University. And I can share a little bit of that too, because divorce and moral injury run congruent. And when you understand what you have, then you can make friends with it, and maybe even use it to the positive.
Yeah, one of my biggest questions, my first question is, when do you have to quit in the face of adversity? That sounds so backwards.
The second book is about quitting. And when I talked to a sports psychologist. In fact, he lives in Colorado Springs, as a matter of fact. And I talked to him and I said, we perceive quitting as bad. And if you think about it, especially you and I were from the same generation. When we were on the playground, right? And you had 5 guys on this team and 5 guys on that team, and you had to go home for dinner. The kids didn't say, okay, we'll go home for dinner and we'll figure it out. They yelled, quitter, right? You quitter, you're a quitter. And that evoked an emotion, right? And so I don't think that we have taken enough time to define in our lives, and collectively, especially as men, what is the equivalent of good quitting and when it's okay to walk away. And how do you set the stage for when you quit to have it be a healthy quit? And how do you walk away from it? You're focused on divorce, especially over 40. I would challenge all of the men out there that are listening to this looking for a tidbit to walk themselves back to the moment that they had that conversation where they said, we're going to get divorced. Or their wife walked in and said, I've had it with you. Whatever it is, the 10,000 reasons why all of a sudden you're less of a person than they are, and they dump it all on you and they run out the door, or vice versa. Well, whatever that is. I would challenge them to say that was the moment of reality. I would challenge them to say that they knew that the reality was coming months or even years before. And so what kept them from putting themselves in a situation where they could quit in a healthy manner so that they could move forward in a healthy way instead of having struggles afterwards, like it was some surprise? And a lot of this comes with the pride or how we grew up on the playground. When somebody puts the QIT word, it's a 4-letter word, right? Quit's a 4-letter word. When somebody puts that in front of you, your internal survivalistic, especially men, survivalistic piece is, I can't quit. I'm not allowed to quit. My gender doesn't align with quitting. So therefore, I have to pick another alternative. And actually, quitting's in the potpourri of things that you can do to stay healthy.
Wow. So we talk about one of your things, you talk about hidden potential. How do you evoke that hidden potential in order to pick yourself by the bootstraps and make that journey toward healing? What's some of the ways men can do that?
First of all, self-talk is the most powerful thing. You can listen to a lot of people. Misery loves company. You're probably hanging out with people that have been recently divorced, or you join a group and they've got 1,000 stories, and there's some things that assuage you a little bit because misery loves company. That's cliche, but there's truth in that. And it's actually self-talk. And so internally, you have got to understand that you may be in a situation where you feel like your worth has been challenged, or you don't feel like you lived up to what the expectation was. This goes back to your inner child and how your father treated you if you had one, all of these things. And it goes back to your inner child. And you have to make peace with the fact that the inertia is forward. And quite frankly, you have these things inside of you that are exceptional qualities that may not have had a chance to mature in the situation that you're coming out of. So you need to re-identify yourself. And once you re-identify yourself and get foundational, then you can start moving forward and you can grow those things and really recreate yourself from the inside out. And it's not something you have to say to anybody. You just have to understand that as a creature, you're going to move forward. And what we do is we take all of our effort and energy, especially our emotional energy, and we dwell on the past, and we do these evaluations, continuous report cards. And odds are 99 times out of 100, we're going to give ourselves a D- or an F. And that's not true. Because if you look at the totality of your existence, most men at the age of 40, unless they have had crazy adversity, most men at the age of 40, if they're truly honest with themselves, can be pretty proud of the things that they've accomplished in the lives that they've affected. And you need to focus on that. Because are we going to trip and fall and stumble and have adversity and quote unquote screw up? Absolutely. So it's more about how you handle that, how you handle the hard, because it's going to keep coming, how you handle that. And then, Dave, really, where I'm really going to take this in the end, especially with PTSD and moral injury, is most of us feel like we're victims. And we get mired in that. And it may take years and years if you don't get the right help and you don't talk to yourself the right way that you can stay in a victim mentality. And everything that you translate based on your situation is almost a woe is me type thing. Versus,
Mm-hmm.
I spoke yesterday morning to a group of public health professionals in the state of South Dakota. Now, that conversation was about leadership, but I opened it up with, I'm the proud owner of PTSD and moral injury, and I'm willing to talk to anybody about that because I'm giving people an opportunity to have a conversation about ownership versus victimship.
God, you just said the title of the damn podcast. Thank you very much.
Yeah. No, it's really about ownership.
Yeah. So you talk about a deeper awareness of our surroundings. How do you obtain that, and why do you need it?
The things you can't see in life are pressed firmly against your face. As a dentist, Dave, when you're doing certain procedures, you put your loupes on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And loupes don't actually make you closer. Actually, you've got to get a little bit farther away for your loupes to focus properly.
Get the focal point.
Yep. But you can see everything better, right? And so the reason that we can't see things is they're pressed firmly against their face, and the reason is because we're moving so fast. We don't slow down. You got to slow down to go faster. If you said, hey, Dave, I was just up in Montana, and I said, what did you see? And you said, I was enamored with the mountains, and I could see the hills and that type of stuff. And I said, did you see any deer? Did you see any antelope? Did you see any turtles? Did you see any rabbits? I said, no, I didn't see any of that. It's because you drove through Montana at 90 miles an hour.
Because it's Montana.
But if you parked your car and went for a 2-mile walk, the things that you see would be incredible. And so you've got to really slow yourself down and push back so that you can take in the totality of things, because there's so much good. And when we're moving fast, all we see is adversity and on to the next challenge. You people say it all the time. I'm on to the next thing. I'm on to the next challenge. What challenge? Why do you have a challenge? You should be embracing what you're doing, enjoying that, and then moving on to the next whatever it is. But we have to look at things like everything's a challenge.
Wow. What are some of the tools we can use to embrace personal growth?
Here's number one in Dave's book. Took me a long time to get here, Dave. Your life team matters, and your life team is not static. And you have to run your life like a CEO. And CEOs do a lot of things. They set culture, they set vision, they set priorities, and they adjust their rudder to put the ship in the right direction, and they communicate clearly. And you have to have people around you that can help you do that, right? So you hire a chief operating officer, chief financial officer. You hire those people. But you know what CEOs also do? They fire people, Dave. And as we grow, not everybody belongs on your life team. And that includes your kids, your cousins, your parents.
Maybe.
My oldest son this year, and we've cleared it up because I had to reground him because he knows my journey and where I'm at, and he wasn't contributing to it. And I called him on the phone and I said, I love you, but you're off my life team. And here's the rules of being off my life team, and here's where I don't want you to contribute because you're not helping me move forward in a healthy fashion.
Wow.
And he called me back about 2 weeks later, and he says, I was so mad at you for 3 days until I finally sat back and thought, this is not about me. This is about my dad taking care of himself and how I'm contributing to that. And so the only way to do that is collectively, you've got to have your vision, your strategy, your mission statement, your culture, your guidance, and you own the rudder. And you need to surround yourself with people that contribute to wherever your destination is, whatever your goal is, where you want to be. And far too often we cling on to life suckers, man. They're like leeches, and they just take and take. Fire them. They got to go.
Wow. Two-part question. How can we prepare for change? When change comes, sometimes it comes so fast that it surprises us. Mm-hmm. And why is listening so important?
Oh boy,
with those two
things, right? I'm gonna do them backwards because I think listening is the preparatory command to initiating the change. There's hearing, right? So if I clapped really loud, you would hear that. If I clapped in Morse code, you would listen to it. because you would have to understand the differences in it so that you could actually interpret it.
Mm-hmm.
Most people hear, not very many people listen. And listening requires you to shut off your mind and be in the receive mode and not be formulating questions, opinions, bias, and assumptions. So you have to be prepared for that, for change, right? Because change requires two things. There's the physical, the action of change, right? That's just putting the couch on the other side of the living room. That's change. That's
Mm-hmm.
the physical action of that. But you also have to be able to imagine the change and see value in that. And only through listening can you do that, because the person, whoever's facilitating the change, is responsible for giving you at least enough of a why so that you see the value in that. Right? It's like squirrels, Dave. You ever watch squirrels?
Yep.
What do they do all day?
Run around, chase each other.
Get the nut, go in the tree.
Yep.
Get the nut, go in the tree.
Yep.
That's the most mundane, boring, absolutely ridiculous thing. Have you ever seen an unhappy squirrel?
Happy as a lark.
Because one is they understand the value of their work. So if you told them that they had to go to a different tree because it had more nuts, they would just go. There would be no revolt. Nobody would go on strike. Nobody would have a sit-in. Nobody would, start chaos. Nobody would do that. They would just go because they understand the value of that. So you have to listen to the point of comprehension so that you can initiate the change. The three core steps of change are unfreezing the change, instituting the change, and refreezing the change. Where the resistance point is in change is fear and pain. So we never get to step one because what we imagine in our mind is things that either scare us. I might lose my job. Do I still have my office? Do I have to drive? Do I have to commute? Do I want to tell? All of these things, right? You can imagine all these bad things that are going to happen. So fear, be it real or perceived, is a reality, and it drives our actions. And sometimes fear is so large in our minds that it drives total inaction. So you don't even start the change. And then there's pain, right? Things that are painful. So you and I could say we want to climb a 14er there in Colorado. You and I want to climb a 14er. We could probably come up with 10 reasons why we can't do that, just immediately. And within 5 minutes, instead of even starting the change, even if that meant we had to change our physical fitness program or whatever it was, before we'd even do that, in 10 minutes we will have talked ourselves out of it and missed the opportunity altogether. So the unfreezing of change takes courage, and you have to have moral and professional and personal courage to take this step forward. And that comes back to self-talk. You have to have the self-confidence to do those kind of things. So how you talk to yourself sets you up for change. And in this case, when you get divorced, that is forced change. That is, bam, and you're in the change mode. So you can set yourself up to get into the situation where, okay, I'm unfreezing change. There's going to be a new me, right? Then you do the change, whatever that is. In a business, it might be a policy, it might be a procedure, it might be structure, like those kind of things. In life, it can be taking care of my spiritual self, taking care of my physical self, changing my habits, sizing my lifestyle to fit my new economic status, those type of things. You can take that on, own it, take that on, and use your time and effort and energy as you're going through this trauma in your life to move forward. I've harnessed the energy of PTSD and moral injury, which used to drive negative polarity, and I've flipped the polarity on it to make a positive polarity so that when it drives energy, I use that energy in a fashion to put myself in a healthier place. And that comes with the transition between ownership and victimhood.
Wow. So I have another double question, since you like those double questions. So let's talk about the value of time and savoring each moment.
I love it. I talked a little bit about this yesterday morning. Yeah, I think yesterday morning, Tuesday evening, whatever it was. I think that I'm going to hedge here, but I hope that your audience smiles when I say this. People that are actually out there working in the corporate world, you may feel this, as a dentist, I'm sure you feel this constantly. The most stressful part of the day for a lot of people is when they open up their calendar. And they don't stress over how many appointments they have, they stress over the white space. So if you walked into your clinic tomorrow and you opened up your appointment calendar, you wouldn't go, oh, I have back-to-back-to-back-to-backs. you would look at that 1 to 3 o'clock block where there was nothing in there and you'd go, what are we doing here? I challenge people to take that time and do the right thing with that. Instead of filling it up because for some reason it gives us value and worth. Men are terrible at this. But you fill this all up and then you're out and you're having lunch. And a buddy comes in. Maybe he's a lawyer or he's a plumber. It doesn't matter. And a buddy comes in and he goes, Dave, how you doing? And you go, man, I'm busy today. I got back-to-back exams, and then I'm putting in a bridge. And you give him your whole schedule. He doesn't care. All that does is make us feel better. That's our worth and our purpose. That's where we land ourselves. Time is not infinite. Set yourself up to utilize your time to make you better, because then all of the other things get better on top of it. We don't do it. We mash things in there that they're not productive, and they don't help us move forward. I have inverted that. This is my ownership piece. I have inverted that, and I have looked at my calendar and I've assessed myself for the day, and I've said, I need to be in the 70-30 balance. And 70% of that is me time. So I'm not going to do a podcast with you. I'm not going to do my own podcast. I'm not going to engage with a client on Vet Ready. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to move that stuff to a different day that fits better. And in here, I'm going to do some work on me, because as I move 2 steps farther down the line, I'm going to be more effective. And I don't tell people what I'm doing anymore. In fact, sometimes I'll tell people just to get a rise out of them. Do this, try this, Dave. Next time somebody says, Dave, how's it going? Say, man, my life is so uncomplicated. Just say that and just do a pregnant pause.
Watch their faces.
They don't know how to, that doesn't work. The computer doesn't take that, because they're waiting for this barrage, because they're already going, yes, he's going to open a door for me to tell him all of the stuff I'm doing. And
so all you're going to hear is, it does not compute.
That's right. Yep. That's it. Yep. Yeah. I love it.
So how do we recognize the value in others? You talked about your tribe or the people in your life.
Sure.
How do you find that value in others?
First of all, I think, we've got to check our ego and step back. And then you really have to appreciate the opportunity to be uncomfortable. I do a keynote speech called Closing the 25-Yard Gap. And that's based on being a farm kid from Northern California that grew up in a Portuguese-Mexican community, and that's about all I knew about the world. And then one day I flew to San Antonio, Texas, and I was in a barracks full of a lot of people that didn't look like me, from cultures that weren't anywhere near mine. And I was made a student leader. I was made a leader in my first week in the United States Air Force, and I've got a badge on that says I'm leading something. And the distance from one end of the barracks to the other end is about 25 yards. And in that 25 yards, there's a lot of uncomfortableness and a lot of challenges. Mm-hmm. And if I would have stood at my end and left the guy at the far end to be led by my assumption and my bias, how I was programmed, nothing bad, just who you are, and I didn't close that 25-yard gap, not only would I not have been effective, but I wouldn't have grown. And you can't start growing until you close those gaps, and you have to have those conversations. So uncomfortableness, here's the fear and pain thing, right? Because it's really scary space. Ideally, societally, as a humanity, if we could find that 12.5-yard spot and continue to meet there, I think you clear up a lot of things.
Wow. What are some of the ways to effectively navigate life, family, and friendships? Some of the basic things that we can do, or men can do, that are suffering. They've got that PTSD from divorce, things like that. One of the things I did, one of my survival moves was I took, and this was wrong, I took the attitude that everybody was stupid until proven otherwise. So that allowed me to heal and move on, but eventually I had to let that go. So what do you think some of the ways to navigate that? Positive ways, rather.
Sure. We talked about listening, right? Listening to comprehension. I think that's huge. When we're hurting and we have pain, we want to transmit. If I smashed your hand, you'd say something, right? Something would come out of your mouth. Your facial expressions and stuff are taken in later on. But if I gave you physical pain, something would come out of your mouth, right? You know what a patient, when you're working in a patient's mouth, you know a certain noise that they make when you may not have them numb enough. You know that.
No doubt. No doubt.
And the first thing that you do is stop doing what you're doing, and then you check on them.
Yep.
So we think that when we're transmitting, people will check on us, and that actually shuts things down. So what you need to do is put yourself in a learning mode. You have to learn. You have to relearn. And so you need to put yourself in situations around the right people, listening in a probably 80% intake comprehensive process and 20% transmission. And the transmission should be in the form of questions, clarifying questions. And then you need to put that together in a calm manner and start to rebuild foundationally, to start to rebuild things. But far too often, as in your example, far too often we want to transmit. We want to do things hoping for a desired outcome. And it's so unsatisfying because we never get that. So all we do is we keep tweaking the strategy, hoping to get a desired outcome, and you never do. Some people turn to alcohol because it distorts their reality long enough that it takes away a little bit of that pain. And that's never the right way to go.
Oh, correct. All right, sir. My men have about a half-hour attention span.
Yeah, don't we all? I love it. Don't we all?
But David, man, I appreciate this. I only got through about a third of my questions,
sure.
So we're going to revisit this for sure. This was so much fun, and you dropped some knowledge on us, and I appreciate that, and I know my men appreciate that. This is going to be tough to write the bio on this one, boy. You're going to make me work for it. But I appreciate your time, your service, and I'm going to, let's talk about your 2 books.
Sure.
And your website. Yeah, the website and the 2 books.
Yeah, sure. You can get the books and just get caught up on me, and then you don't have to do a long bio. maxfabconsulting.com, MAXFAB consulting.com. We'll take it all the magic that's in there, and you can read up on me. And MaxFab is a whole story and a keynote of its own, and that comes from the combat zone about attitude, because it's the one thing we control every day. And if you have a good one, it tends to put you in the right place. But the book's Giving Back Life and Leadership from the Farm to the Combat Zone and Beyond. I wrote that book for people that have short attention spans. They can only read about 3 pages and they want to stop, so the chapters are short. They're power-packed chapters. They're focused around a thing. And at the end of that is some one-liners to make you introspective. So a lot of it's about Dave's challenges in life, even from being cut from a high school baseball team all the way through a few war stories and some combat stuff. And When the Cows Lie Down, it was around this theory of quitting. And there's good quitting, bad quitting, and quitting with indifference and how you do that. But also maybe to show leaders out there, maybe some traits that they exhibit as to why people quit them and they have turnovers in their organization, or that it's not as healthy as they'd like. Again, introspective work. And I think both of the 2 kind of build off of each other. Yeah. Most people tell me, especially with the first book, but most people tell me that once they read the book once, it turns into a workbook and they just keep it around for when they have situational issues.
There you go. David, thank you again, but hold on to the line here and we'll close it out. But I want everybody to thanks for listening and have a good night.